Will you recognize me, call my name, or walk on by? If you are of a certain generation, I know you know those lyrics. And today I'm here to do the Don't You Forget About Me tag. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life. And as I mentioned, I am here today to do the Don't You Forget About Me tag. Anyone else out there Gen X? Yes? If you're Gen X, you 100% know the song Don't You Forget About Me. Does anybody just immediately conjure up the Breakfast Club when you hear that song? Yes. If you grew up in the 80s, then that's probably what comes to mind. And that was the first thing that came to mind when I heard the name of this tag. So, of course, I had to reference the song in my video. But enough about the song. Let's talk about the tag. First of all, I have to thank Laurie at Books, Ink, and Paper for tagging me to do this fun tag about books you've forgotten, books you'll never forget, books you want to forget, all of that jazz. We'll get into the categories of the tag in just a moment. This tag was originally created by Bookworm Adventure Girl, so thanks to her for this super fun tag and these really fun categories. So there are 4 categories for this tag. We will go through each of them, and I have picked a few books for each category. The first category is called Clean Slates, and this category are books you've read that you don't remember anything about. There are so many books, you guys, that could fall into this category for me. I am terrible about remembering the plot of books. I will often remember something, generally how the book made me feel, something about the characters, maybe, the general idea of the plot. But it is rare that I will remember a book in its entirety, start to finish. Those definitely are books that are few and far between. But right now for this category, we are going to talk about books that I don't remember a thing about. So I thought this would be kind of fun. What I did was I pulled out my reading journal, and this is my reading journal from 2006 to 2016. And I just started going through it. This is a very simple reading journal. All I have on here are the title of the book, the author, and then the date that I finished reading it. I've highlighted some of my favorites. I've put a few notations, but really it's a very simple journal that I used to keep of my reading life. And that has changed over time. But from 2006 to 2016, this was how I kept my books. Thought it would be fun to go back in time into this journal and look at some of the books from here and see what I do and do not remember about them. And I picked 5 books. I basically started in 2006, went up to 2010, and came up with a book from each year that I literally remember nothing about. And then I thought it would be fun. I have my iPad in front of me, and I thought it'd be fun to look at each of the books on Goodreads, see what rating I gave the book, and just kind of give you guys a gist of what the book actually is about and see if that jogs my memory. Let's get into the books that I picked for this category. The first book that I wrote down was A 6-Letter Word for Death by Patricia Moyes. And I don't remember anything about this book. I do know that it is part of the Henry Tibbetts mystery series. I am reading the first book in the series right now, but this is apparently book 16. So I started well into the series. I have zero recollection of this book. The title alone made me think it had something to do with crossword puzzles, A 6-Letter Word for Death, but that didn't even jog my memory at all. So looking at Goodreads, I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. I finished this on May 1st of 2006, and the book description says, a crossword puzzle compiled by a mischievous group of mystery writers leads Chief Superintendent Henry Tibbett and his wife into a murder case involving a horrifying 20-year-old secret. Still nothing. Yeah, I don't remember a single thing about this book. So there's that one. The second book that I don't remember at all is called Chasing Shakespeares by Sarah Smith. And according to Goodreads, I gave this, again, 3 stars. I finished it on January 10th, 2007. And I'll just read you the description. It says, meet Joe Roper, a thoroughly modern graduate student who has landed the job of a lifetime working in the famed Kellogg collection of Elizabethan texts and curiosities. He's been passionate about Shakespeare since reading a duct-taped paperback copy of Macbeth as a kid. But if all the world's a stage, Joe's working-class roots do little to prepare him for his role in the academic arena. Enter Posey Gould, stage right. A glamorous rising star at Harvard, she insists that a letter Joe's found, signed by one W. Shakespeare of Stratford, is a career-making discovery for them both. Particularly because the letter suggests that the plays were not written from Shakespeare's quill. What follows is a literary adventure story that places Joe and Posey in a world where the London Eye looks out over Shakespeare City, Hollywood producers rub elbows with the Queen's court, and an unsolved mystery spans across 5 centuries and 2 continents. A first-rate thriller from one of the masters of the genre, Chasing Shakespeares is also an enduring tale about love, art, and poetic justice. Okay. When I saw the cover of the book, I recalled having the book in my possession. The cover rings a bell. Nothing else about it sounds particularly familiar. I've read a number of books that have to do with Shakespeare, with, novelizations of, did Shakespeare really write his plays? Were they written by somebody else? That's definitely a historical topic that I have a lot of interest in. I really like Shakespeare. I studied Shakespeare quite a bit in college, and I just find that question very intriguing. So I like when I see books that are dealing with that topic, I tend to pick them up. Clearly, that's what happened here. Doesn't look like I thought it was the most fantastic book, but 3 stars. I guess I liked it okay. Still no clue what it was actually. I mean, obviously I can tell you from the synopsis what it was about, but I don't remember it. The next book that I don't remember a thing about is Death in the Oxford Box by Veronica Stallwood. I gave this one only 2 stars, so I don't think I liked this. And I finished it on July 11th, 2008. And the book description in Goodreads says, dawn on a cold February morning and a mist hangs over Oxford, shrouding spires and domes. Feisty novelist Kate Ivory enjoys her early morning run with the mainly women's jogging group. It gets her away from her word processor and she hears all the local gossip on the hoof. This morning, one of the women complains to Kate that her husband has walked out on her, taking with him the valuable antique enamel mourning boxes given to her by her grandmother, who, horrors, is coming to visit. The group plans to nick the boxes back again. How could they guess that their amateurish raid would provide the cover for a more sinister crime? Yeah. I don't know. I love the cover of it, and I love the title. That is part of why I wrote it down to share with you all, because I thought, oh, this title is very intriguing. Why don't I remember this book? Well, apparently because it wasn't very good. That's too bad. That's disappointing. It is part of a series, which has quite a few books in it. It looks like 14 books. This is the Kate Ivory series. I don't know. I wonder if it gets better as it goes along. Has anyone read the Kate Ivory mystery series? They don't have the greatest of reviews, like overall average reviews look like around 3 stars, so maybe not. But the next book is The Serpent and the Scorpion by Claire Langley Hawthorne. Another 3-star book. I read this, finished it on January 24th, 2009. The description says, a gripping mystery of scandal and intrigue starring a spirited and beautiful Edwardian heiress. It's the end of 1911 and Ursula Marlowe, struggling to maintain control over her father's textile empire, finds her business trip to Egypt interrupted by 2 violent deaths. The first victim is her new friend Katya, the mysterious wife of a wealthy Russian financier. Then, when a young woman dies in a fire in one of Ursula's factories just days later, she returns to investigate and discovers the woman was already dead before the fire started. Driven by her need for justice, the headstrong Ursula is determined to unravel the possible connections between the 2 deaths, the return of her Bolshevik ex-lover, and disturbing events in the Middle East. The Serpent and the Scorpion is a tale of romance, betrayal, and murder that will appeal to fans of Elizabeth Peters, Dorothy L. Sayers, and Jacqueline Winspear. Well, that's very high praise to put this book alongside those 3 authors. This is the second book in the Ursula Marlowe mystery series. Apparently I read the first 2 books in this series. I don't remember either of them. There are only 3 books in the series, though. It sounds up my alley. I love things, mysteries, particularly set in the Middle East. That is something of interest to me, or Egypt. I really love books set in Egypt. I have just a fascination with Egyptian history and, yeah, ancient Egypt, but not this one. This one I can't recall at all. And then the final book that I don't remember anything about, The Pawn by Stephen James. Okay, well, this book I like the best, apparently, of all of these that I have mentioned. I gave this one 4 stars. I finished this on January 20th, 2010. It says Special Agent Patrick Bowers had only met one man who made him truly afraid until now. When he's called to North Carolina to consult on the case of an area serial killer, he finds himself in a deadly game. Cunning and lethal, the killer is always one step ahead of the law, and he's about to strike again. It will take all of Bowers' instincts and training to stop this man who calls himself the Illusionist. And just when the pieces start to come together, Bowers realizes they're not quite adding up. Can he unravel the pattern and save the next victim, or will the Illusionist win the game by taking one of his opponent's pieces? Thrilling, chilling, and impossible to put down, The Pawn will hold suspense lovers in its iron grip until the very last page. Again, this is part of a series, the Patrick Bowers Files. This is the first book in the series. Was every book? No, Chasing Shakespeares wasn't. But I think every other book here is part of a series. Well, these have pretty good reviews overall on Goodreads, it looks like. I don't read many thrillers anymore, but I do like that sort of adventure type thriller where it's not like gory, scary in that way, but it's kind of tense, on the edge of your seat, fast-paced thriller action. I do sometimes like to read those, especially in the summertime, like on vacation, or when you just need like a cleanser from you've read something really heavy, you just need something light, something very page turnery. I do enjoy those books. I still don't remember this one though. The next category in the Don't You Forget About Me tag is called Genie's Lamp. And this category is books you wish you could forget. I mean, when I started really thinking about this, there are very few books where I feel like, oh, I just wish I had never read that. That was so terrible. I think I'm much more likely to have DNF'd a book like that. And actually, one of the books that I have listed here is one that I DNF'd, but I read well over half of it before I DNF'd it. So I feel like I can at least talk about why I did that. The first book is actually one that I read for a book club that we started at the office I used to work in. But one of the books, which was selected by somebody else who I worked with, was called Uglies by Scott Westerfield. And it came out around the time when all of the books like Hunger Games and the Divergent series, kind of around the same time as all of those. So it's got that sort of, it's a YA book, and it's got that sort of dystopian alternative reality going on where in this world, when you turn 16, you can have an operation that will turn you from ugly into pretty. And so we're following Tally, and then she makes this new friend, Shay, and Shay isn't sure she wants to become pretty, and so she runs away. And then they start to learn like this whole other side to the pretty world. I didn't even give this book a rating on Goodreads because it just wasn't for me. And I really wish I hadn't read it. Enough said. The next book that I wish I could forget is Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I read this back in 2012, and I didn't know until I was almost completely finished reading the book that this was supposed to be a retelling of the Bluebeard story. I didn't know really anything about Bluebeard. I've never really read the Bluebeard story. So I don't know that that would have helped me if I had even known that going into the book. But I have never been so confused when reading it. I literally did not know what was going on in this. And I think it's supposed to be kind of an allegory. But it just was, it was bizarre. And it made me feel really kind of dumb that I couldn't understand it. It didn't seem like it should be so obtuse to me, and yet it was. And it's a book that, like, I still think about it because I can't get over how difficult it was for me to read. And I still have no idea what happened in the book. That's how confusing it was. I consider myself to be well-educated and well-read, and yet that one was beyond me. So, yes. Again, just another book that wasn't for me. So the next book is the one that I DNF'd, and that book is The Book of Speculation by Erica Swyler. And I read this one in 2016, and I DNF'd it because I just could not take the main character. Simon, I believe is his name. And he was so... Okay, first off, let me go back. One of my biggest pet peeves in characters in novels is when the main character is so apathetic that they're not doing anything to change their lives. They're just sort of going along and letting life happen to them. And I think that can be done in a way that works, and then it can be done in a way that doesn't work, at least for me. And this is one of those books where that just did not work. I could not get past Simon's apathy for his own life. And it was too bad because there was a storyline. This was a dual timeline story, and the timeline that we were following in the past, which involved a traveling circus. So there were these two characters, Amos and Evangeline, and they were part of this traveling circus. And that piece of the story I was actually interested in. And I ended up giving this book 2 stars solely based on that part of the story. But in my review, I did write a review of this on Goodreads. I said, I give up on this one. After listening to over half of this audiobook, I've decided I can't take Simon for one more minute. I may see if I can find spoilers somewhere because I'm a bit curious about the curse on his family. But I loathe apathetic characters. It's my biggest pet peeve in modern novels, and Simon is no exception. Sell your falling down house, get a job, and get the girl. Enough already. I'm giving this 2 stars only because the flashback story involving Amos and Evangeline and the traveling circus was a much more compelling story than Simon's. I would have read a book just about that. Yeah. Again, I can remember exactly how Simon made me feel when I was reading this book, and I wish I could forget that. So those are the books I wish I could forget. The third category for this tag is Forgotten Gems, books you think need more love. Again, I continued going through my old reading journal to kind of refresh my memory on some books that I know I haven't talked about here on my channel before and that I do think need more love. So the first book, which is actually a book series, but I will mention the first book in the series so you can track that one down because it is a series you should read in order. That I want to mention as one that I think needs more love is a book I don't know that I've ever heard anyone talk about it on BookTube or Bookstagram, and that is Hotel Paradise by Martha Grimes. I have heard people talk about Martha Grimes before. She writes the Richard Jury mystery series, which I actually haven't read, but Hotel Paradise I originally thought was just a standalone mystery, but when I was putting things together for this video, it is actually the start of a series. So the main character in this one, she, I guess Martha Grimes went on and wrote some more books about her. So Hotel Paradise is a mystery. It's one of those sort of slow burn mystery stories, so don't go into this expecting a lot of really fast action, but it's very sort of suspense character driven, and you get really sucked in just wanting to know exactly what's going on here. I'll read you the synopsis. It says, a neglected lake covered with water lilies, a once fashionable, now faded resort, a derelict house full of secrets, uninhabited for almost half a century. The death of a 12-year-old girl 40 years in the past, and another girl who becomes obsessed with his death. With her knack for encouraging adults to reminisce, she begins to piece together puzzles from the past and present. Hotel Paradise is a delicate yet disturbing view of the decisions a young girl must make on her way to becoming an adult and the choices she must make between right and wrong, love and truth, life and death. Yes. It's been quite a few years since I've read this one, but again, this is one of those books where I don't remember like the plot per se. I just remember exactly how I felt reading it. I read it one summer and I was completely immersed in it. And I think if you like coming of age novels, I feel like this is sort of a bit of a mystery version of that because our main protagonist is a teenage girl. And yes, but now that I've learned there are more books in this series, I'm going to go check them out because I really did enjoy this very much and I never hear it talked about. And so I wanted to recommend it to you guys. And the next book that I want to recommend that I never hear talked about is the Bachelor Brothers Bed and Breakfast by Bill Richardson. And this book is cozy and funny, and I read it way back in 2008 and gave it 5 stars, and now I really want to track it down because I want to reread it because I remember that I loved it so much. The synopsis is a pair of endearingly eccentric bachelors in their 50s and fraternal twins own and operate a bed and breakfast establishment where people like them, the gentle and bookish and ever so slightly confused, can feel at home. Hector and Virgil think of their B&B as a refuge, a retreat, a haven, where folks may bring their own books or peruse the brothers' own substantial library. An antic blend of homespun and intellectual humor, Bachelor Brothers Bed and Breakfast is a place readers will want to return to again and again. I mean, what's not to love? It's like a book lover's book. How fabulous would it be if there was actually a bed and breakfast that was for book lovers? I bet there is. I'm sure there is. Tell me in the comments if you know of a book lover's bed and breakfast out there, or hotel or anything like that. Someplace where you can go and stay where it's all about the books. And I have such warm, fond memories of reading this book. There's also a sequel, which I didn't love as much as the first book, but this first book is just delightful. Book lovers everywhere, go track this one down. I highly recommend. It's just heartwarming and funny and lovely. And then the next book I want to recommend is actually a graphic novel. And I feel like this is a graphic novel for people, even if you don't think you like graphic novels, I would give this one or this particular author a try. But the one I have to recommend is French Milk by Lucy Knisley. And Lucy Knisley has done a number of graphic novels. She has written quite a few, and I've read a number of them and enjoyed them all. But this one is by far my favorite, and it's all about the month that she and her mother spent living in Paris. And the drawings are so lovely, and this sort of memoir story of their time in Paris and just what happens to them there, just like the food that they buy and the people that they meet and the places that they see. I mean, if you like Paris, you should definitely check out French Milk. It is just a delight, and you can read it in one sitting and be transported to Paris, and I loved it. 5 stars all the way. And then the last book that I think is one that needs more love, and this is going to be a book which I don't think is for everybody, but it is one that I really enjoyed reading, and that is The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barberry. And this is a very eccentric little novel. It is translated from the French, translated by Alison Anderson, and it's about the residents of this apartment building, and we follow Renee, the building's concierge. She is short, ugly, and plump. She has bunions on her feet. She is cantankerous and addicted to television soaps. Her only genuine attachment is to her cat, Leo. In short, she is everything society expects from a concierge at a bourgeois building in a posh Parisian neighborhood. But Renee has a secret. She is a ferocious autodidact who furtively devours art, philosophy, music, and Japanese culture. With biting humor, she scrutinizes the lives of the building's tenants, her inferiors in every way except that of material wealth. Then we also follow Paloma. She is the super smart 12-year-old daughter of the Josses who live on the 5th floor. And then we also find We also meet Ozu, who's a Japanese man, and he befriends Paloma and Renee, and it's just kind of all about the residents of this apartment building, and in particular these three characters, and it's just lovely. If you enjoy French translated literature, if you enjoy Japanese literature, I think both of those things are evident in this novel, and I adore this book. It is just wonderful. Wonderful character studies in this. So if you like characters, this is the book for you. And then the last category for this tag is called Forget-Me-Nots, books you will always remember. For this category, I thought it would be fun to pick books that I remember for specific reasons. And that may have to do with the book itself, that may have to do with the circumstances of reading the book. But in order to bring you guys some new books that I won't ever forget and that I think you should know about, that was sort of the criteria I used as I was looking through my reading journal. So the first book I want to mention is Sarah's Key by Tatiana de Rosnay. And this is a historical fiction set during World War II. It goes back and forth between Paris, 1942, and then 60 years later. And it's about Sarah. She's a 10-year-old girl in 1942, and she's taken with her parents by the French police when they're arresting Jewish families in the middle of the night. And to protect her younger brother, she locks him in the bedroom cupboard and promises to come back for him as soon as they are released. And then this story intertwines with that of Julia Jarmond, an American journalist investigating the roundup. In her research, Julia stumbles onto a trail of secrets that link her to Sarah and to questions about her own romantic future. So I read this book in one day, and it's not particularly short. It is 293 pages. I was homesick from work, and I started it in the morning, and I could not put it down. I had to know what happened. And that's all I'm going to say. But I will never, ever forget reading this book. I don't think I could ever read it again. I'm actually contemplating giving this book away, either putting it in a little free library or selling it back to Half Price Books, because I know my soul can't take reading it again, even though it's a fantastic and a powerful story and a really well-written World War II historical fiction. But oof, yeah, I just don't think I can do it again. So won't ever forget it. The next book that I will always remember is Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. This is the first book in the Century trilogy that he wrote. These books are very chunky, but they're very easy to get through. They are highly readable, page turners. The trilogy follows 5 families, and it spans a century, as is indicated by the name of the trilogy. And Fall of Giants, I mean, I read it in hardback. It's like nearly 1,000 pages, if not more. And I took it with me on my honeymoon to Hawaii. And I read it on my honeymoon. So I will, 1, never forget it because it is just an epic story and I was completely immersed in it. But 2, it will always remind me of being on my honeymoon on Maui with my husband. And I remember I came home and I lent the book to my mom to read, and she was reading it in bed and she had it sort of propped up and sand was falling out of it. And she was like, "There's sand in my bed now." And I'm like, "I just brought you a little bit of Hawaii back in the book." So it was well loved. Unfortunately, my copy got lost along the way. It was loaned out to someone and I've never gotten it back. So it makes me kind of sad because I really would like to have that book, that exact book that I read on my honeymoon. I won't ever forget it. Fantastic story. And then the next book that I will always remember is one that was gifted to me when my son was, I think, a little over a year old, and that is Operating Instructions by Anne Lamott. And the subtitle of this is A Journal of My Son's First Year. And this is all about Anne's life with her infant son. And if you are a new mom, even if you're still just the mom of young children and you can very vividly remember those early days of motherhood, I highly recommend reading this. I laughed until I cried when I read this book. I've never felt so seen buy a nonfiction book before as I had when I read this one, and it was just exactly what my mother's heart needed at that time in my life. And I think this would make a fantastic gift for a new mom. Maybe not in those initial first few months, but if you know a mom whose birthday is coming up and they have a 6-month to a 1-year-old, this is the book to give them. It's utterly fantastic and just such a real look at what it's like to be the mother of a newborn. Fantastic. And then the last book that I will always remember is one, for some reason, I read this, I believe it was in the fall, and it's a story set in a school. So you know how I do love to read my stories set in schools. And I also read it, I was reading it around when the final Harry Potter book came out. So I remember I stopped reading this book to just binge read the final Harry Potter book. Like the day it arrived on my doorstep, I read that book in one day. I did nothing else but read all day long. And so I have vivid memories of reading this book around that. And because Harry Potter is also set at a school, they just like the books are kind of interconnected in my mind in that way. But this book, not Harry Potter, is To Serve Them All My Days by R.F. Delderfield. And it is so wonderful. It's such a fantastic story of a man who becomes a teacher in a boys' boarding school, and it sort of just traverses his whole life and all of his experiences and the people that he meets, his coworkers, the boys at the school, and just sort of what happens to him. And it's a lot of just sort of quiet reflection on, life and teaching and, growing up and getting older. And I just have such fond memories of reading this, and I can remember reading this in my apartment I lived in at the time and just being sort of curled up cozy on the couch with this and a cup of tea, and it just gives me all the warm fuzzies when I think about this book. So I highly recommend it. That's it. That is all of the books for the Don't You Forget About Me book tag. And this was so much fun because this has taken me down a rabbit hole of looking at some of the books I read long ago, way back in the early 2000s, and just reminding me of some books that I'd love to reread, that are part of series that I want to continue to read. This was such a fun tag to do, and it just really took me down memory lane. So Laurie, thank you so much again for this tag. And I would love to hear from all of you guys in the comments. Let me know, is there a book you've read that you remember nothing about, books that you will never forget, a book you wish you could forget, especially those are always fun, right? A book you're like, I wish I had never read this. Could just pluck that out of my brain. Anyway, definitely leave me your thoughts on some of these categories in the comments below. And if you haven't done this tag, by all means, give it a go. I'm not going to tag anybody specifically, but I think feel free to do this one if it speaks to you. It was very fun, and yes, I enjoyed it. So thank you so much for watching. If you could give this video a like and hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, that would be fantastic. And I will be back with another video very soon. Bye.